I think education is not a federal issue. Now, that said, I'm also practical here. I want to make that clear. I'm not running as an ideologue. I see there are limitations to what we can accomplish within a certain time frame, and I would say that we need to try and ensure that parents have the primary role in education. Beyond that, state governments. This is an area where the federal government has taken on a large role, progressively, in my sense is, in recent decades. To try and reverse that will require an incremental approach that gives people time to adjust. Yeah.
So from a funding perspective, and I guess it's hard to set with the federal government, with money comes strings. And so would you support a different way of funding, or do you think schools we should continue with?
I'm always uncomfortable with the idea of sending $1 to Washington and getting dribs and drabs in return with strings attached. So I think that's one of the primary reasons why we ought to try and push power from this federal level back to the state level.
How do you respond to the argument, and this is where people get with the property tax issue versus another revenue source for education, is that poor districts are going to have bad schools? I'm
sympathetic. I am sympathetic. I am.
That's not going to heat the schools, though.
What's that?
Sympathy ain't going to heat the schools.
Right.
So where do they get the money?
What ideas are you?
Well, I'm not running for Congress.
Right.
So.
Well, it's not a federal level issue. I mean, so that's.
Well, what I'm saying is, do you think the federal government should step into these districts and provide federal funding for poor districts?
My preference would be that these decisions are made on the state level. If they want to redistribute dollars to the classroom across the state level, then that makes a whole lot of sense. We have a whole lot of very good people in this country that share your sentiments and share my sentiments. Right. Share our sympathies, if you will, and want to put that into practice in terms of public policy at the state level. But
what about the school boards? And this came up in Kentucky. I don't know if it's come up here. They wanted to teach Bible studies in public schools. For or against it? Should it be their decision? Should it not be their decision?
What came up in Florida?
No, in Kentucky, where I'm based out of, this Kentucky state legislature voted to offer Bible study in public schools.
Yeah.
Would you support that? Do you think that
if I were a state legislator, yes. To me, learning about the Bible to me strikes me. I of course would listen to constitutional arguments in contravention.
That's where I'm kind of getting with this. Is the Establishment Clause would say no.
Sure. And this is one of the problems with government schooling, with public schooling, is it creates these very difficult situations where I think there's a way to teach the Bible that doesn't necessarily have to be religious instruction. Okay. The Bible has it's a great work of literature. It's a historical document.
What if they wanted to offer the Koran with it? Any problem?
This is why I prefer school choice and vouchers, so that parents can send their.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, so that parents can send their children to schools which they might prefer.
Okay, so.
And help dictate the instruction.
All right. So education, basically, your position is education is a local matter. That federal standards, federal money, because that's where they're going.
Yeah.
Because. Yeah. A lot of this is driven by the international test scores, where we rank competitive economic issues, and I know you have an economic background. You've studied overseas. I mean, do you think we're getting it done?
Ironically, education is a national security issue. I mean, when we cease to have an educated, productive workforce, then at some point we'll cease to be the wealthiest country in the world. And when we're no longer the wealthiest country in the world, and all the viewers will know that we're not going to be the most powerful country in the world, a country that can invest in the military R&D and training and whatnot, and therefore we lose the ability to defend our way of life.
Isn't that a kind of a contradiction?
It's really not. It's there's a certain, I guess, irony in it, not a contradiction, that it's a state-level issue, but there are national implications to how well we're accomplishing the task. I'm not sure that that is a justification. In fact, I'm quite sure it's not, because it's a national in scope issue. The fact that the federal government somehow has to get jurisdiction over it. If everything that were handled at the state level, arguably, if it rises to a high level of importance, that doesn't suddenly become a reason to throw it to the federal government just because it's very important.